Hey, good morning, GMB pros. Welcome those that are live, Nick, and those that will catch the replay. Thank you for your support. We have our guests and family, Rhys here.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming, whether it's live or in the recording. It's great to have you guys here.
Yes. So I kind of wanted to make it casual a little bit today. I keep getting asked about CTR and not CTR, I'm sorry. Proxies, and how to use them for different functions, especially with CTR. They really come to play. If it works for different countries, what have I been asked? Different tools and whatnot. So I thought, why not bring in Rhys and kind of cover that a little bit and just kind of basic, get an idea of the concept, how you can leverage the proxies to what you're doing, what projects you're working on and whatnot.
For sure. So I guess, starting out with the different types of proxies, we may as well we'll probably start out with what a proxy is. Most of you probably already know, but I'm sure there's a few of you that have never delved into proxies before. But it's basically a internet connection that you can use to spoof or mask or hide your existing internet connection, generally to stop repetition of like the same IP address being used over and over on different platforms, whether that's data scraping. So maybe you're going to Google and you're crawling websites and you're doing hundreds or thousands of clicks or interactions in a short period of time, or whether that's sneaker bots, click-through rate manipulation, anything that you're kind of wanting to do where you don't want your IP or your location or your device to be recognized over and over again. I mean, you can use a proxy for watching Netflix in a different country. It basically takes your internet connection, it diverts all of the traffic through the proxy. How they do it, don't ask me. I got no idea. I just buy them and use them. And then it reroutes the traffic to whatever website you're using, whatever software or anything like that. And they think that you're coming from the country where the proxy is based rather than your own IP.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Like, because there's so much more uses for them, right? Not just CTR. And it is that, and it will work no matter where you get it. So somebody asked me, they were in Australia, like, hey, your proxies, will it work? I'm in Australia. And it's exactly right. It will work because the idea is that IP switches, right? And you're spoofing your location. So, and you can do that with whatever, for whatever you want.
I guess another thing as well, that if it's essentially a private VPN. Like VPNs are essentially a proxy. That's all they are. They are. It's an IP address. You can use, in some instances, you can use VPNs like you would use a proxy to spoof your location or to change the geographical like IP address, things like that. The thing about VPNs is it's very publicly known what IP addresses are used. So if you're not caring about the spoofing and more so just not getting banned or not getting captures, for instance, if you're web scraping, then there's some VPN providers you can use which will rotate the IPs as well, but they're very public. Like you can look up lists of NordVPN and ExpressVPNs and you can see what IP addresses they use for their connections. So if you're trying to trick Google and things like that, not the best.
Correct. So like, let's say with the proxies that we use through Proxy Pixie, right? We have control over them where, you have access to them and then you can plug those in. Those are meant for you to plug in, like, on like ads power, right? Multi-login, something like that. So where you can take, let's say, for example, ads power, right? And create a persona around this browser and make it look like you're somewhere else by spoofing the location, right? And you always will go to it, and it kind of builds up the cookies and the captcha and some history. So you're building up trust as well. And you connect this to a proxy, right? And a proxy is an IP address, username, and password that you get. You connect it to, in this example, in this tool, ads power, that creates a whole like browser that you can do, leave reviews, watch time, whatever you really want from that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I guess different types of proxies are used for different methods and different reasons. Like we touched on data scrape. Oh, I think now I'll go through like the different types of proxies, what they're used for, and they'll get more expensive, but more unique as we go. So at the start, I spoke about the VPN proxies. Like they are a proxy. Most people wouldn't associate that. I don't think I've ever thought of that before this call right now. But I mean, technically, it's a proxy. It's an IP address, and it's a connection, real cheap. $5 a month, you can get NordVPN if you go on YouTube ads. But again, not very good for spoofing. Not very good for not anonymity, because Google knows, and a lot of companies know what the IP ranges are. Then you go up. The next step would be, I guess, data center proxies. Super fast, great for web scraping, really quick internet, like hundreds and hundreds of megabit a second, if not faster, gigabytes a second sometimes. Again, not so anonymous. There's public lists of AWS and Google Cloud and all of the database proxy providers. So if you're trying to imitate a device, it's not going to work so well. Then we have residential proxies, which basically come in all different ways, but it's essentially an internet connection from like a modem, like in a residential house. So whether that's somebody that's bought a bunch of modems as a business and has set them up and is selling them, or whether it's some sort of network that is using like the back end of people's computers to connect to their internet with their knowledge, of course, and provide that as a service. There's some platforms where you can actually get paid for your internet to be used through the software. And they're good for imitating computers. They're not so fast as data center proxies, but they're a lot more anonymous because they're genuinely an internet connection from a residential address. They're not a business, they're not a data center, they're not a VPN. They're Google considers, or you go to any website tracker, it considers it a residential IP address. So just like any internet connection at a home address. And they're great. They're fantastic until you want to start mimicking mobiles. And you need 4G or 5G mobile proxy for mobile devices, or anything imitating mobile devices, because that's what the connection that comes through a mobile is. So when you start trying to use residential proxies on CTR tools that involve mobile browsers and mobile devices and things like that, it's not going to work so well, because Google's expecting a mobile internet connection and you're giving it a residential/desktop, for a better term, internet connection. So that's the range. Depending on your uses, you need different things. Like I definitely wouldn't go out and buy 4G proxies for Scrapebox. They'd be burnt very quickly and you'd be spending a lot of money. But there's no chance I'd be using data center proxies for any traffic to my Google business or my website or anything like that. I think as well, the 4G proxies are really good because you can use them on a desktop or a normal internet device as well. Like it doesn't have to be used on a mobile. You can use it on a desktop browser because it could be a hotspot connected to the phone, for instance. And it's just natural. Whereas the other way around, not so natural.
Yeah, and that's what like I have the most experience with. I haven't dealt, I think, with any other than my house. Like all of the proxies that we have are set up through mobile, T-Mobile specifically. So even like through Proxy Pixie, it's all mobile uh proxies that you can set up with that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the mobile proxies are they're definitely the best. I think they're the most versatile because I mean you can use them for practically anything when it comes to anything you need proxies for, like Alfredo said before, reviews, watch time, um, CTR, any tools that you need where you need to plug in your own proxies to CTR tools. 4G proxies would always be the go. Like it's just Google trusts the 4G internet connection because it's so much effort to go out and set up a proxy rack and a proxy server for 4G servers that it's not really weighted in the algorithms to even consider it being spam unless you're doing tens of thousands of requests.
Absolutely. Now, is like what makes a good, like, let's say we'll stay with the mobile proxies, right? A good mobile proxy, like obviously speed, right? Um, 5 to would say 20 megabytes per second, right? It's all about the
Mhm.
upload, I would assume.
The upload is, yeah, I mean, both have to be relevant. I think upload is where most get capped. Most would be limited in the upload as opposed to the download. But the way the proxies work, I believe, is they use both because they download the details that you're receiving and then they upload it back to the server to spoof the internet. Is that correct? You know more than me about this stuff, but is that how it works? It sort of bounces in to the proxy as download and then it goes back out as upload.
Yeah, so that's what like people will like, hey, what is my bandwidth limit, right? So usually a decent one is between a 5 and a 20. That way you
Yeah,
can do what you want, and then like rotating the IP address, usually it's on an auto rotator, 10, 15 minutes, depending, like you said, 100% it's like depending on the application or what you're doing, right? Do what you need to
yeah.
do, and boom, it rotates. So when you hit it again, it has a new IP address that you're not getting caught with. That it's just keeps banging the same IP address. Especially, again, back to what depending on what you're doing, um, the application, whether it be reviews, watch time, whatever your CTR is, going to a particular website enough, um, just to bump it up, whatever your goal is. So all the natural traffic that would normally get there will be you catch that wave, right? You just want to bump it enough to get to that stream of the natural stuff to hit it. Um,
I think the
depending on
last thing I
what
would
your goal is.
say is very important as well would be the option to have dedicated proxies. Like some people don't need them. Some people can use shared proxies and they're shared between multiple people in with the same device, the same IP, the same mobile proxy. But I think having the ability to have a dedicated proxy, like I want dedicated proxies. I don't want anyone else accessing the networks that I'm using for my tools. I want to have full control of speed because obviously the more devices you have connected, the speed gets split. So if you've got two devices connected to the one IP, the speed's going to be
Mhm.
essentially half as what it is if you've got one. So I think that's important. Like a lot of companies that sell cheaper proxies won't have the dedicated option. And it's not an event, it's not necessary for everybody. I mean, some people want to save the money and use shared proxies because they're not using it too much. But I think that's a big thing. Yeah, the speed's super important. It has to be able to rotate. You need to be getting those new IPs and dedicated proxies. I think if those three things are good, as long as they're reliable and there's good uptime, then that's what I look for in proxies.
Yep.
And the price.
100%.
At
Price is
the
always.
end of the day, like 99% of people never go for the bottom, never go for the top.
Yeah, so like reliable, right? Customer service, the stability of it, make sure that it's, uptime on there. And definitely like you shared, there is you'll see like we even have that dedicated or shared proxies. You'll get access to those. Um, but yeah, 100%. So it's
Yeah,
kind of
man.
it's kind of hard, like unless you have specific questions. And I'm gonna try to do one where like it's tool driven. So like, hey, how do you use it, with a specific tool? Because you have a lot of people that want to do, whatever, whether it be data scraping or whether it be CTR, people like Rhys, people like Agency Assassin, they eliminate all that stuff for you, so it makes it easy and you don't have none of that configuration, right? Um, as far as that goes, but if you want more like control or management, or if you want to switch it up, then you would want, depending on the tool, right? Um, you
Yeah,
got
sure.
CTR booster, right? That you you have more control. You can point it to a different direction, any direction you want, compared like to people that take that burden off of you, but you're getting those tools like Riz, for example. He does a lot of the driving, CTR, and like Agency Assassin, they're just GMB focus, right? So if you want to go outside of that, then you would probably need different tools, depending on what your ultimate goal is. So I am gonna try to do that to kind of help people with the proxies and how to leverage them and optimize them for getting results, getting data, and what you do with them exactly. And then if you have a application, like look, you want reliability, you want dedicated service at a good price point, right?
Exactly. I think some common questions as well, like some common things that sort of you see around. Um, there's the difference between maybe IPv4 and IPv6. That's something that comes up, not really spoken about much. It's not too important specifically, but like if you're looking at buying proxies or you're looking at sort of description of a website, like what is this? What are these terms? IPv4 is essentially the older method of creating IP addresses, and it used a 32-bit of 32 bits of characters to actually create the IP address. And it got to a point where there weren't enough numbers and they started running out of proxies or running out of IP addresses. So then they created the IPv6, which has way more and is essentially infinite. So that's the difference. You very rarely see IPv4 proxies anymore. So there's still IPv4 and 6 with mobile residential data center and things like that, but these days the majority of proxies are IPv6. Um, that's just sort of something I think I see a lot of questions on, or sort of a lot of confusion on. People aren't sure which one to get. Well, most of the time it'll be IPv6, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I find
And
it
I
like,
think,
yeah, it depends on what
sorry,
you're
go on.
using it for. Yeah, sometimes like some websites I find won't render if you're on IPv6 versus IPv4, the older model.
Oh
But
yeah,
we have both. We can do both.
okay. Can you choose?
Mhm.
Is it a okay? That's cool. That's good. I actually didn't know that.
Yep, yep.
So
So it's especially for those that know, I don't want to say like know what they're doing, but for specific task, IPv6 is great, because there won't be no limitation like data scraping or whatnot. Those are great versus like if you need to go to like particular website to do particular functions, then you'd want it IPv4.
there you go. You heard it here first.
That's what I find it to like the best purpose for them, right?
Yeah, I don't do too much with the IPv4s, but
Yeah, you can
I'm no proxy master. I know I do what I do with them well, and a little bit more, and that's about it.
yeah.
But things that I use them for, I mean, CTR, of course. And I think the reason for that, the reason for the mobile proxies is, well, first of all, you're imitating mobile devices, and so you need a mobile connection. Second of all, they're more trusted than any other proxy because they're harder to fake, and you can't fake them per se. Like, I, there's a lot that goes into setting up a 4G proxy. I don't know if you want to go into that, Alfredo, maybe like how does it done? Like not too specific, but like what's the sort of complexity needed to do it? Like people might be thinking, well, I might just do this at home, but in reality,
Hmm.
that's not really a good idea because it's pretty difficult. But maybe you
Yeah.
want to go over something along those lines?
So yeah, what's involved, right? Like obviously with the mobiles, literally you have to get a mobile. It involves a SIM card. It involves like mimicking that cell phone on like dongles and the hubs, right? It involves having a good internet connection, a stable internet connection, that you get good signals coming from the cell towers. In my case, the setup is with T-Mobile, right? And having that fast, stable internet, because in my case, they're physically, here, it's not like in the cloud or anything like that. There has a physical, not cell phones, but SIM cards. And then there's all that technical stuff that, like the engineers and how to make sure that they're staying on, that they're stable. And, then it goes into the IPv6, IPv4s, making sure those are open up. Um, Gosh, what else is there? There's even stuff that I don't understand that the engineers do, right? As far as the server itself that needs to be on here. Um, it's not the cheapest setup, and it requires a lot, right? It's definitely, and then there's different options when you actually have the physical phones, but then you run into even power issues, overheating issues. Even with the SIM cards and the hubs and the dongles, you got to make sure like it can't be a sensitive system even what you have around you in your home setup versus your office setup. So for example, we ran into the issue with like a home Euro system, the mesh system that wasn't compatible. The router is another thing that you come, across with. Boosters is another thing that could affect it. So it can be a very sensitive like system to make sure that they're stable and make sure that we're giving you the best, fastest, most reliable product at a good price. And that's the essence that we found. Is like with a lot of proxies companies out there, they're not the most reliable. Or then you rent to they're not the cheapest, they're expensive, right? For a reason. And I understand them because it takes a lot to maintain them. And then once, they're not reliable, they're up and down, or they're expensive, then you have the customer service issues. Like, if something happens, which it will, right? Things are not perfect. Like, can I get good customer service? So those are kind of the areas that we try to cover. That everything, it's just not a matter of like proxies or getting them. It's the setup, the reliability, the speed, and the customer service at a great price point. But all those things are involved, literally from the towers of the cell phones to the physical product to the internet connection to the router setup, and then the power. Make sure you have it in enough power going to them, because it can't be a sensitive like system, and then everything else that's around it that might cause it, the effect of it. So uh,
A
I
lot
don't.
goes into it,
Yeah,
that's for
yeah,
sure.
it's a lot. It's a lot, and
And that's not, I think the biggest thing as well, like one SIM card per dedicated proxy. I mean, a lot of people oversee that. Like for every proxy you buy, every 4G proxy you buy, if it's dedicated, there's a physical SIM card sitting in a dongle, sitting in a server rack somewhere where the person runs the proxies. And that's why Google trusts them, because that's a lot of work. Like that's you buy a SIM card, you set it up, you activate it, you have a plan, you pay monthly for that data. Like you can't fake that. It's impossible to fake that. You can manipulate it and you can use it for nefarious reasons, but you can't fake it. You
mhm.
can't just make a 4G proxy. Trust me, I spent a bit of time looking before I knew anything about proxies. I was like, surely there's a way to do this on the cloud. Turns out there's not.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
people might think, oh, why they're expensive? Well, the you got to pay for the monthly cost of the SIM card for one, and then you got to pay for all the other stuff, and then you got to make profit. Like they're not a cheap thing to run, and a lot of companies charge by gigabyte or by megabyte. And I mean, with our tool on CTR driver, we use about 10 gigabytes a day of data, if not more. Running all those searches with the maps results and like the driving directions and everything. I mean, we need pure, unlimited, no cap proxies. And a lot of companies they charge you by the gigabyte, or they have like unlimited proxies, but it's capped at a very, very low number. So things like that as well.
Yeah, like I'm
And
looking at
to
like
know,
mine right now, right? Like there, you can block websites, you can do the proxy bandwidth limitation, proxy traffic limitations as well. And like, Riz, like there is no the traffic, I leave those wide open. The only thing is the obviously the bandwidth, right? You can only have so much
yeah,
for your internet connection, but it's usually about 15 to 20 is what we do. But other than that, yeah, it's definitely pretty open.
yeah, definitely. No, it's a good service. They're hard to come by reliable 4G proxies.
Yeah. So guys, with that, there's really no questions that I'm seeing here. I don't want to extend this too much and respect Riz's time. We kind of wanted to cover proxy seems to be coming up, like different countries. Does it still work? the limitations on there. I had a call today, like, okay, the customer service thing, the billing issue came up today. And those are all that does matter, right? So yeah, if you
I
guys
guess the
have,
last thing, I got a couple of questions. Where do we get them from? Like what's the website?
so let me
Are they available yet?
say one more time.
Are they available?
Yes. Yep. Let me I'll put this here. Let me see. And there's different options, right? Like Riz was saying, you can do shared, dedicated, and then there's bulk buys as well that you can do. Let me put these, I'll put it in here, and I also will put it, oops, in the Facebook in the group as well. But with that
Right.
said, guys, I appreciate anything else, Riz, that you wanted to cover, or
Well, I think that pretty much sums it up.
yeah, it's kind of hard to cover unless you have specific questions, or it's really like tool specific, right? And with the tools, it's kind of tough, right? Because we're putting your name to the tools, but if you're using it and they require a proxy, let us know, and we'll do a tutorial on it, like how to plug it in, what are the parameters, maybe how to even use the tool properly to get the better bang for your buck. But or just different case study scenarios that you can use the proxies with. Um, so with that said, guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate Riz. Thank you. We're trying to cover like the basics of proxies here. But with that said, again, much love, much success to everybody, and I'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.